This week we get in a heated debate about some players that we are really fired up about. We talk about how predicting fantasy football, as we all know, is a crapshoot, and how you just can't guess those players. We're going to make some bold predictions, and we're going to talk about some players that really blew up, and talk about selling high when you're making your trades. Without further ado, let's get started on the podcast.
Projections are stupid as well.
I agree.
Particularly how much people put stock in like roster decisions based on the projections.
Yeah.
And it's because they want to see their projected score be just a little bit higher than the other guys. So they'll just, make a decision not based on sound fantasy advice, but on little projections, which is kind of silly.
Okay, so if they shouldn't be basing their trades on projections, because we talked a little bit about trades last week and making sure that you are getting the best value out of a trade. If you shouldn't be looking at projections, then what should you be looking at?
I think you look at matchups, and I think you look at recent trends with your player and with their offense. I think that's the mistake a lot of fantasy owners make. Is they don't actually watch football or don't actually follow multiple games or multiple teams. Because what you'll see is things like, for instance, I hate to bring him up for the second week in a row, but with Dez Bryant, 2 weeks ago he had a really bad first half, and in the second half he was having a animated conversation, we'll say, with his offensive coordinator, basically asking for the ball more. He had like 6 catches in the second half and had that really nice game last week, or 2 weeks ago now, I guess, because they just had their bye. But things like that tell me Dez Bryant is going to see more play in his offense because he demanded it, he got it, and he's been producing. Those are the kind of things that you want to think about and look at. And then the matchups, of course, is a huge one.
Well, that's why you can't be a passive fantasy football owner. You can't be somebody that sets his lineup on Saturday night and then leaves it and maybe watches their one game, but wakes up in the morning, has some eggs, and then kind of putzes around the yard until 8 o'clock, and then maybe catches like the first half of the night game and then goes to bed. That does not make for an effective fantasy owner. Good fantasy owners are dedicated day in, day out. I read about fantasy football 7 days a week. I wake up early on Sundays to take my dog to the park so I can be home in time to make sure my lineup is set up, and I know who the inactives are in the 1 o'clock games. There are so many shows. My DVR is overflowing because I watch football on Mondays and Thursdays and Sundays. I have no choice because of who I am and how I'm wired, but to watch football, and fantasy is a huge part of that. I did not like football as much as I do before I started getting into fantasy football.
Certainly, and we talk about it. Fantasy is all about maximizing your probability to succeed, right? So you try to get guys that are low risk. You try to get guys that have a high probability for success. And so the same thing about reading about multiple teams, learning about what's going on certain offenses, what's going on with certain defenses, matchups, injuries, those types of things. If Aaron Hernandez comes back next week, I'm probably still not going to start him over Owen Daniels, who I just picked up, because Owen Daniels is actually the number 3 tight end in PPR, and he was a free agent up until this week. One of the guys in our league had him, picked him up, played him against me, dropped him. Other than that, he's been a free agent, and those are the kind of things that, because he has this stipulation the past couple seasons of Owen Daniels he came off an ACL tear, I think 2 years ago. People have avoided him, but the dude is leading his team in targets. He's seeing a ton of passes thrown his way, and he's catching them. So you take guys like that to maximize your probability for success. Sometimes it works. I think in your case this season, so far it's worked pretty well. In my case this season, it's kind of backfired on me. I tried to maximize my probability by taking a ton of wide receivers early, and a lot of those guys didn't pan out. But Demaryius Thomas did.
Well, you got the draft. Fantasy football is such a crapshoot, and I'm going to say this all the time. Fantasy football is a crapshoot, and what you said, the word probability is huge because, of course, Calvin Johnson, based on his skill set, the team he is on, and his scenario, has a higher probability to score points than, let's say, Dwayne Bowe, right? Because Dwayne Bowe is on a bad team with a bad quarterback, and he's the only receiver there. It's likely that he is not going to get the same kind of stuff. Plus, he's not the physical freak that Calvin Johnson is. This isn't maybe a great comparison, but I think it's fair. But at the same time, Dwayne Bowe's doing better because he's getting a lot of garbage time because fantasy is a crapshoot. Dwayne Bowe could also tear his ACL tomorrow in the shower and be done for the year, and some idiot could have made a trade for him this week thinking it was the best thing in the world, and then it's going to get blasted for trading for a dude that got hurt. Like, that's why I get so frustrated with fantasy football, is because it's all a crapshoot, and people put so much time into like analyzing and thinking they made the best decision, and then sure, if you can get lucky, and you can definitely increase your chances, increase your probability of getting lucky, but it's all a freaking crapshoot.
This sounds a lot like one of those scenarios where the guy comes in and says, hey, my friend has this issue, and I'm asking for my friend because you just went on a rant about how you could trade for a guy who gets hurt and misses the rest of the season, and it's a crapshoot. And pretty sure you just gave up Marcus Golston for Ryan Williams, who now got injured and is missing the rest of the season. So, yeah, I understand.
I told you not to bring that up. I'm not going to go. I think we can gloss over that because of how much I've spent talking about it on Twitter. But
if you care at all, and I doubt anyone listening does, but if you care at all, you can go look at Jimmy's Twitter and see his defense. He's not really defending himself against anyone. He's kind of just trying to make his case on his own, because I think, when you make a trade that backfires, it's a little bit hurting.
It's right. It just goes to the not. But I've been saying for years you can't predict it. But yeah, it goes to the non-predictability of fantasy football, and it's also a reason that I am so hesitant in all of my trades. Is because I tend to stay way more conservative in trades because I don't trust that the guy I trade away is not going to explode while the guy I get is going to be crap. Because it's happened to me multiple times, and I don't trust my fantasy luck.
It's so hard. It's so hard to part with guys that you drafted and believe in. For instance, I've been trying to trade DeMarco Murray the past 2 weeks. Not because I don't think he's very good. He's been double digits about every week. He hasn't looked, I would say, great, but he's still a central piece of the Dallas offense. But the thing is, whenever I bring him up in a trade, I remember that he's only played 4 weeks because he just had his bye, and 3 of those weeks were against, I think, top 5 or at least top 7 something rushing defenses. So he played against Seattle, who obviously has a great defense. He's played against Tampa Bay, who's had a great defense, and he's had another one against another top rushing defense, and he still has produced double-digit points. So I bring him up in a trade, and then I think about maybe I'll do this, and then I talk myself out of it. It's so hard sometimes to talk yourself out of these guys that you invest in, and you want to believe them, and you want to see them come through for you.
Well, the hardest thing to do
you trade them away, and then they explode.
Well, the hardest thing to do in fantasy football is to sell high. Why on earth would I want to? A guy on my team is got 25 points, and this is not my scenario because it doesn't happen as a quarterback. But a guy on someone's team has 25 points 2 weeks in a row. That's the time you sell high, especially if there's someone that has a potential injury risk or somebody that is on a team that may start to struggle or has a bad stretch of games down the stretch. You try to sell high, but you can't, because how do you justify getting rid of someone with that kind of production?
Right.
Unless you're making out like a bandit in the trade, literally getting, top of the pile guys,
right,
only like a rank or 2 down from the guy you're trying to trade. You can't justify it to yourself to get rid of him, especially not when they're one of the top players on your team. Jamal Charles, I'm having this problem with him now.
Yep.
I can't bring myself to trade him because he's the best player on my team, not named Matt Ryan, not a quarterback. And nobody else is performing like he is, and he's performing well above what I expected, even taking him in the first round. And, he's the second best running back. I want top five bring back from him, and I don't necessarily think that's fair, but I don't have to make the trades.
That's absolutely right. Ultimately, you don't have to do it. But the thing is, you have a lot of holes on your team because you just gave up Colston, who that turned out, you could have traded Stevie Johnson or Marcus Colston. Stevie Johnson had the, big weeks his first 3 weeks. Colston had bad weeks his first 3 weeks, and then he flip-flopped recently. But you've got some holes on your team, so the question is, if you have a guy like Charles, do you ride him as the cornerstone of your fantasy offense, or do you try to flip him for 2 pieces that are going to produce at multiple positions? I've been trying to give you DeMarco Murray for him and then some other pieces, right? And again, yep. DeMarco Murray, Seattle, Tampa Bay, and Chicago. Those are 3 really good run defenses. Seattle and Chicago are just 3 really good defenses in general. But Tampa Bay's got a great run D with Gerald McCoy and those big boys up front. They stop the run well. And he still had double-digit points. Dallas hasn't scored over 18 points in any of those 3 games. They come up against Baltimore this week. Baltimore not very good against the run this year. They're kind of middle of the pack, I guess. Baltimore, Carolina, the Giants again, and Atlanta. So I'm expecting DeMarco Murray to bounce back. He's going to be a 14th round keeper for me next year if I keep him. So I'm struggling with trying to get rid of him or not. I suppose, like you said, if the offer's right, you got to jump. But the problem with fantasy trading is people overvalue their own commodities, and that gets you in a pickle. It becomes really tough to trade. I think trading's been really difficult in our league this year. I haven't seen a trade offer that I thought was pretty fair in a couple weeks, and it's really frustrating when you're trying to improve your team and fill gaps.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, and part of it is, as a fantasy league, you're trying not to trade yourself out of a championship while also trying not to trade your opponents into a championship. So,
Right.
Any trade that we make is obviously going to be something that we believe makes both of our teams better. And I don't want to make your team better. I hate you. When it comes to, especially this week, we play each other. I hate you this week.
We play each other in 2 leagues.
Yeah. Well, oh God, that's
not
ridiculous.
that the other league matters, but
yeah, but we play each other in 2 leagues this week. I hate you and want you to lose. Why would I ever trade you someone on a week that we play each other that would make your team better? But if I want to fill it, and this is another problem I have, how long can you wait on a guy? Before the bottom drops out of it. Like look at Stevie Johnson, for instance. I could have traded him when I traded Marcus Colston. Maybe got more than just Ryan Williams for him because he was on double-digit points every week. Triple-digit points would be awesome. Double-digit points 3 weeks in a row. He was doing great. Had a touchdown in the first 3 games. Probably could have got more than Ryan Williams for him. But I traded Marcus Colston instead, who was at roughly around 6 points a week, and got Ryan Williams because he was becoming a starter, and I got talked into that junk. And then they flip-flopped. Marcus Colston has like 5 touchdowns in the last 2 games. Stevie Johnson hasn't seen the end zone and is, averaging, again, over 2 games, but averaging still on like 5 points. I can't ride that forever. Like, that's stupid.
Yeah, it's annoying. It's fantasy. What are you going to do? For instance, last year with Calvin Johnson, I was just waiting all season for him to, for the bottom to fall out. Had a lot of trade offers last year, but I just rode him to the end. Contrarily, someone's going to ride one of these running backs like Jamal Charles or DeMarco Murray or Arian Foster. They're going to ride him too hard, and one of these guys is going to get hurt, and it's going to be a week too late. Like last week when I think one of the guys in our league traded Adrian Peterson the week before he got hurt. You're just never going to be able to predict that.
Yeah. No, that's the crapshoot. It's all a freaking crapshoot, and it makes me angry.
A guy that's not
because I always get screwed by it every year, and I was riding high.
A guy that's not a crapshoot is AJ Green, and he's been a freak. And
he's not a freak. He's a punk.
He's what?
He's a punk, and a punk, and I hate him. And he can never. He's terrible at football. He's lucky.
It's because you're a Steelers fan, and he's probably the best player in your division at this point.
That's because I don't own him in fantasy, and my feeble trade attempts to get him were all shot down.
He's got a touchdown in the past 4 weeks. Every week he's had a touchdown since week 2.
That's stupid.
He's a beast, man. Totally unstoppable. This is his 2nd year in the league. Where does he rank in your mind on in terms of wide receivers in the league? Not in fantasy, but in terms of wide receivers talent-wise. Where do you rank him?
Super high. Like this year, not fantasy-wise, but this year you've got to put him at the top. I mean, he's got the best stats. He's leading the league. I'm pretty sure in most relevant categories, at least as a piece of his team. I mean, I think if there was ever a year where you talk about a non-quarterback offensive player that's not a running back either as an MVP, it might have to be AJ Green. That's not a joke. I put him in my MVP discussion. If we were having that talk right now, who would be MVP of the league over the first quarter, which we just finished up? Well, actually, first a little bit further the quarter, it might be AJ Green. Andy Dalton is still making bad decisions, and he's showing some sophomore woes as a quarterback. AJ Green persists and still has good games, no matter what. Is there anyone more important to their team? Jarvis Green-Ellis hasn't been good on that team this year and has started fumbling for the first time in his NFL career. Bernard Scott's out now, so they can't run the ball. So fantasy-wise, their running backs are completely dead to me. So the only fantasy bright spot is AJ Green. The only bright spot on that team right now is AJ Green and an okay defense, which hasn't even been that good.
So you're not going to like this.
That team, he could be MVP this year.
So you're not going to like this, but AJ Green, is on the 3-2 Bengals. He's their best offensive player, centerpiece of the offense, right? That team is 3-2, which is good. You asking who else is maybe an MVP candidate that's not a quarterback or just not a quarterback, and you're not going to agree, and you're not going to like this, but Percy Harvin on the 4-1 Vikings is their best offensive weapon as well. And I know you don't like that, but it's a guy who returns punts, a guy who rushes the ball, and a guy who receives the ball. He scores in so many ways. I think that's a dude that is keeping that team alive offensively. I like Christian Ponder, but it's not Christian Ponder's great skill that's getting this team to 4-1. It's the weapons that he's using. Obviously, it's Adrian Peterson's bionic knee, but Percy Harvin, kind of impressive.
Well, I'll tell you why I don't like that, and why I think a lot of people will say what you're saying, but I'll tell you why they're wrong. And it's because Percy Harvin is one sunbeam away from having a migraine and being out for 3 weeks. So I think that Percy Harvin's bottom is way more likely to fall out than AJ Green's, because AJ Green doesn't have a history of being bad.
That's baloney. That's baloney.
Because out every year with a migraine for the freaking
anybody
out of the field.
Anybody is one play away from an ACL tear and the bottom falling out. All right, nobody is safe from that. We saw that last year when about every running back went down. So I get it. He has migraines. He's the Paul Anderson of the NFL, but you can't just say that because he might get a migraine that he's not the best offensive weapon on that team and one of the best offensive weapons in football.
But when does Adrian Peterson start to come back and this luster of Percy Harvin goes away? I just think Percy Harvin is. Yeah, okay, I have to give you that he's pretty good, but I also think that Percy Harvin is going to see some decline as time goes on, and this talk of him being maybe the best offensive weapon in the league is going to start to go away. There's more going on that team than just Percy Harvin. Their defense is playing really well. Christian Ponder is playing better than a lot of people expected and really well. Adrian Peterson is Adrian Peterson. Probably 0.75 right now while he's still getting up to speed. Tore his ankle up a little bit, some mild sprain. So he's slowed down a little bit by his injuries and stuff and his little nicks and scratches here and there. But AJ Green is his team. Nobody else is performing on that team.
Okay, so maybe AJ Green is by far the best player and the only weapon on that team, and the Vikings have a few more guys. But listen, Adrian Peterson is still averaging 4.4 yards per carry. He's still rushing between 17 and 25 times a game. He's catching a few passes out of the backfield. I don't think we're seeing a limitation on Peterson right now. Again, 4.4 yards a carry. He's only got 2 touchdowns on the season, and that was week 1 against Jacksonville. What we're seeing is a transition in the offense where when they get in the red zone, they like to throw to their big fat tight end, Kyle Rudolph, and use Percy Harvin. Percy Harvin had a 4-yard rushing touchdown last week. So you're going to tell me Adrian Peterson is more important than Percy Harvin when they're going to rush Percy Harvin from the 4-yard line?
I just don't understand why. Why did this all of a sudden happen? Like fantasy crapshoot. Why all of a sudden is Percy Harvin this huge piece of their offense? Were they game planning this whole time for Adrian Peterson to be out and thought Percy Harvin was going to be, the next Adrian Peterson? I mean,
I think Percy Harvin was one of those guys in college at Florida that was a playmaker, right? A lot of speed, agility, could just do a lot of things. Obviously, as a punt returner, he's been great, or a kickoff returner, he's been great. But he's had those injuries his first couple of years and missed a couple games. And they had the Brett Favre era, then they had the Donovan McNabb era, and then they've had, the in-between Joe Webb types. And so I think now they're settling on Ponder. I think Ponder really likes Percy Harvin. I think Ponder's going to use Percy Harvin, right? He's targeting him a bunch. He's catching between 6 and 12 balls a game. He's going for at least over 80 yards a game. He had the one down week against Detroit, but he still returned a kickoff for a touchdown. So in fantasy terms, he was fine. I just think the offense is changing to exploit these playmakers, and Percy Harvin is one. As much as I hate him, and as much as I hate the guy who owns him in our league, it's just what it is. I don't know.
I can't like it. I won't like it. And it's not a Minnesota hate thing. It's mostly I don't trust Percy Harvin long term kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at it. Surprisingly, he played every game last year. It looks like, according to NFL stats. Um, I don't trust Percy Harvin, but hey, whatever. If he pays off, kudos to him. I don't know.
Jordy
I don't
Nelson.
trust him. Whatever.
Jordy Nelson, a guy this year. Um, Here's my question. Was last year for Jordy Nelson just a fluke year and just an amazing one-time thing? Or has this offense changed so much that Jordy Nelson is just kind of on the outs? He's had 2 weeks this year where he's had under 4 points in fantasy. Obviously, the offense they're only 2-3 as a team. What's your take on Nelson?
Jordy Nelson, everyone I think thought was Wes Welker. They thought he was going to perform like Wes Welker did, and sure, for a season, it looked like he might be that person for that for the Packers, and be that person for fantasy owners that was going to be Wes Welker. He had a great year last year, no doubt.
Did you just racially profile Jordy Nelson?
I didn't racially profile Jordy Nelson. They have the same play style.
Because he's white, you say he's going to be like Wes Welker? Jordy Nelson was a downfield target last year. He wasn't a 2-yard pass and then yards per catch or yards after the catch guy like Welker.
Aaron Rodgers threw downfield last year. Tom Brady does not throw a lot of downfield passes. Tom Brady throws a lot of intermediate routes, slants, and stuff like that, and Wes Welker goes across the middle to get them. As far as production levels, people thought Jordy Nelson was going to be Wes Welker, and for one season, he was right there with him. It's not the same. He's not the same player. That team was outrageous. Like, they were 15-1 last year, AJ. 15-1.
I know.
MVP and had a crazy, crazy year.
I know.
Well, you can't expect Jordy Nelson to keep that pace up. It's not feasible.
I guess so. I would like to see Greg Jennings get back in that lineup.
So would the Packers.
What's that?
Every fantasy owner that has him and the Packers all would like to see Greg Jennings get back in that lineup.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying, just because he's white doesn't mean he's Wes Welker.
It has nothing to do with race. You're being racist right now.
I'm being racist.
You're being racist.
All right, whatever.
The same play style will be the same.
Victor Cruz had 3 touchdown catches this week against Cleveland. Hakeem Nicks is still out. Victor Cruz is, he's got to be a top 3 wide receiver as long as Hakeem Nicks is out.
Yeah, he does. I can't argue with that. I want to yell at you and argue right now, but I can't. I'm so fired up about that Percy Harvin, my fantasy team, all this crap.
You can't argue because I'm right, and it burns you that I'm right.
No, it burns me that Victor Cruz is doing well because he was another person that I thought obviously, he was kept in our league. We're a keeper league. He was kept. I had no shot at him anyway, but I was one of those people that was like, Victor Cruz's season last year was all a fluke. He is not going to be good again this year. Manningham's gone. Cruz isn't going to get the same kind of plays, same routes. He's going to drop out and be nothing this year. I was wrong. I was wrong again.
So, for new listeners, this is a trend you're going to become familiar with, Jimmy being wrong a lot. So
that's really funny. That's funny. Who's 4-1 this year, and who's 1-4?
Who's got a league title under his belt? That's right.
Well, all right. The past is the past.
Because I know it burns you, let's talk about some Baltimore Ravens players, like Torrey Smith.
Disgusting.
Let's talk Torrey Smith, Jimmy. Let me hear your unbiased opinion on Torrey Smith.
Torrey Smith is really good at taking the top off of the defense. He gets over it, and Flacco is not good at throwing a deep ball. He's not good at deep ball accuracy. But Torrey Smith manages to get his way to the ball, catch the ball, and then take it to the house a lot of the time. I've seen some of their games. Obviously, I'm more vested in their games than some others because they're directly opposed to my team. But Torrey Smith is he just has a special skill set. He's quick. He's not burning away from corners. He's getting behind them. He's not completely torching them, but when he is behind them, he's able to make a lot of plays, especially with some poorly thrown deep balls. There's an unbiased run on Torrey Smith.
That was actually pretty good. I'm pretty proud of you. Normally, you would belittle his family and all these other things. Torrey Smith, I think
I will not belittle his family because he lost a family member this season, so that's insensitive.
That's true.
Torrey Smith, though, was below double-digit fantasy points in 3 of his 5 games this year. A majority of his points came in Week 3 against New England, which was a 31-30 shootout, and Week 4 against Cleveland, which was 23-16, but he got most of his work then. They beat Cincinnati 44-13. He had 8 points. So he's not invincible. He's not AJ Green. I will even go so far as to say he's not Percy Harvin. But
Well, certainly he's not those guys. Those guys are really good. I like Torrey Smith. He's actually physically, he's a bigger guy than I thought he was. I thought he was kind of a little shifty, route runner, deep ball kind of guy like Deshaun Jackson type. But watching him play this year, he's a bigger guy than I thought. And, what you're going to see from the Baltimore Ravens wide receiver core is a lot of inconsistency, right? Dennis Pitta was really good for the first 3 weeks, has been very mediocre he was very good the first 2 weeks or so, very mediocre the last 3. Torrey Smith will have those big games. Anquan Bolden has had a few really big games, but mostly not so much. It's just tough to trust them. So Torrey Smith is your best option there. I like him as a fantasy player. I think, some weeks he's going to do like he did this week in our league. He only had 5 points, 5.3, I think. But some weeks he's going to have 28 or 30. So if you feel like the matchup is right, this is the whole thing. It's maximizing your probability to succeed, to make it as nerdy as possible. But you got to play those matchups and find the time and watch that Ravens team if you're a Torrey Smith owner, or wait till he has a big week and ship him off for some pieces that you really need.
yeah, it's possible and likely, and you should absolutely do that. Absolutely do that. Now, I have a question. This is a question about someone that blew up and was one of the best fantasy players of the week, and that is Mr. Ahmad Bradshaw, who in our league had, outrageous points, I'm sure. I'm still maneuvering.
He had over 200 yards rushing.
Yeah, 200 yards rushing and a touchdown, plus 3 catches for 30 yards. Ahmad Bradshaw? Really?
I don't know what to tell you, man. I thought for sure once Andre Brown came in and had that 26-point fantasy game and, was just looking like a beat, I thought Ahmad Bradshaw was done. He had the neck injury. I thought it was over. Let's not overrate the fact that he was running against the Cleveland Browns defense, and that the Browns are still missing Joe Hayden, I think, or maybe was he suspended for 4 games or more?
That's right. Joe Hayden should be back this coming week,
Okay.
But that impacts Victor Cruz. That doesn't. They're running. I guess some of their running game, but not all of it. So where did this come from? Where did this 200 rushing yard game come from? Against the Browns defense, it's been okay. Been pretty good. They're aggressive. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you think of the Giants, you think of a passing team first with Manning and Cruz and Nix when he's in there, Ramsey Barton and all these other guys now that have actually stepped up and been pretty decent. I'm assuming the Browns game plan for the pass, and Bradshaw just took advantage of the opportunity that was there. I don't think we're going to see another 29-point game out of him this year. But hey, if you're an Ahmad Bradshaw owner, I say sell high if you can. Now's the time.
Now is definitely. They play San Francisco this week. Try to sell before that and hope somebody's dumb and doesn't notice.
Other thing that's important to notice. Ahmad Bradshaw had 30 carries last week.
Ugh.
So he had 30 carries on the ground. He was averaging 6.7 yards per carry, and he had a 37-yard run. So, and he lost a fumble. So in our league where fumbles are -3, he really had over a 30-point day, but that fumble brought him underneath. But I agree. You're going to try to sell high on Ahmad Bradshaw while you can. Maybe find the guy who scooped up Andre Brown to be a prick to try to turn to you, and maybe you try to ship Bradshaw back to them.
Ridiculous. So ridiculous.
What are you going to do? It's a Giants. The New York team suck. What are you going to do?
New York. Not the state or city I've ever been. But.
Hey, so here's a guy we were talking about before we recorded who looked awesome this week, has really looked awesome this season. Reggie Wayne.
Yes.
The immortal.
The immortal
Reggie Wayne.
Only 33, not as old as I thought he was. He's not like Randy Mossfold or anything. But I used to think that Reggie Wayne's fantasy value was solely tied to the fantasy value of Peyton Manning. That if Peyton Manning was playing well, Reggie Wayne would play well because Peyton Manning made Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison good. That was my thought. Then last year happened. Reggie Wayne had a down year last year with Curtis Painter and I don't even know who else played for them, but Curtis Painter was really bad.
Dan Orlovsky.
Dan Orlovsky has run out of the back of an end zone to cause injury himself. So he doesn't even count as a human.
nobody's good when those guys are throwing the ball to you. But it turns out, I agree. It turns out Reggie Wayne
was washed up.
Turns out he's really good at football. Who knew? Maybe Andrew Luck is just that good too. He had over 200 yards receiving, but more than that, if you watch the game, and fortunately enough, where I was watching, they switched over to the end of that game, so I got to see the end of it. More than just being, the centerpiece of that receiving offense or that passing offense, the dude is a gamer and was making plays and getting separation and fighting for extra yards. He really was responsible for that touchdown where he just got the ball over the goal line. That guy, just from a pure NFL football standpoint, I think is way better than most people thought. Again, because you compare him with Peyton Manning and you assume 75% of his production is Peyton Manning because you compare it to like Austin Collie and Pierre Garçon, and those guys looked way better when Peyton Manning was throwing the ball to him. Austin Collie, obviously, if he was healthy, I don't think he would look as good as he did when Peyton was throwing to him.
Well, what about like Demaryius Thomas? Is that a Peyton Manning thing? Because that's where it gets confusing for me. It gets confusing because Demaryius Thomas is really good this year. He's having a lot of great games this year. Is that Peyton Manning or is Demaryius Thomas good? Not Reggie Wayne good. Reggie Wayne is, I think it's fair when people call him a future Hall of Famer. I think, down the line that's probably likely for him. But is Demaryius Thomas as good as Reggie Wayne or is that the Peyton Manning effect?
I think that's a great question. Demaryius Thomas hasn't had a great quarterback since he's been in Denver. He didn't get to play with Jay Cutler, so he was there in the Kyle Orton years and then in the Tim Tebow years. So as a Steelers fan, he's capable as a wide receiver to make big plays with a bad quarterback. I think his talent is being used better with Peyton Manning throwing him the ball. Peyton will target that guy a lot. He's obviously the downfield guy. He stretches the field a lot. He's a good red zone target. But for whatever reason, Manning keeps going to Decker and Joel Drayson in the red zone.
And Brandon frickin' Stokely, go figure.
Yeah, which kills me as a Demaryius Thomas owner because Demaryius Thomas does all the work to get them downfield, gets these 40-yard catches and runs and whatever. And then they go to Eric Decker or Joel Dreesen or whoever in the red zone. It's killing me, man. It's so frustrating.
Demaryius Thomas,
188 yards this week.
Demaryius Thomas's best skill right now, and you'll see this as a fantasy owner too, is if you could set up a league where yards after catch is a stat that you can get, like Demaryius Thomas may be the number one. The Steelers, his big play against the Steelers was he caught it like a yard behind the line of scrimmage and then took it all the way up. I mean, that's his skill is getting yards after the catch. And that's an underrated stat in the NFL. I wish fantasy could track it easily or that it was good to track. But
first of all, I don't know what they do in Pittsburgh to brainwash their fans, but Demaryius Thomas burned your backup safety, and that was about at least a 20-yard pass and a 60-yard run is what it really was. It wasn't a screen play.
Are you talking about the playoffs last year?
I'm talking about playoffs when he
I don't give a crap about the playoffs. When do playoffs affect my fantasy team? Never.
I'm talking about a player
I'm talking about week one this year. He had a 40-yard catch and run.
That is true.
1 yard behind the line of scrimmage. And that is a play that they're going to. They're going to that screen behind the line of scrimmage. Like I said, yards after catch doesn't matter in fantasy. He's putting up a lot of points. He's pretty good. I don't think it's Peyton Manning. I'm over that because of Reggie Wayne this year. I don't think it's Peyton Manning. I think Demaryius Thomas is really good. He's really fast, quick. He's 50, whatever he needs to be.
I agree, and as a Demaryius Thomas owner, I'm comfortable with him the rest of the season. I think Peyton's going to stay healthy. I don't know why, but I just feel like he's too smart to take any hits that are really going to put him in jeopardy. But I'm comfortable going with Demaryius Thomas. Again, I just wish they'd use him a little bit more in the red zone. Stop going to these backup guys. But I suppose in the red zone, he probably draws the double coverages, the triple coverages because he's so big and so athletic.
Could be.
But I'm happy with his production thus far.
All right, AJ. I think it's about that time. Little Chex Mix Bold Party Mix predictions time.
Let's do it.
Let's do a quick recap this week. And if anybody saw, I was recapping for everyone on Twitter as Sunday went on. That kind of annoyed me after a little while, so I don't know if I'm going to do it long term. But to recap, AJ, your prediction was that you would lose fantasy football by 40 points this week. 40 points.
And
I will tell you, Arian Foster did his darndest to try to make you lose by 40 points. However, you came in only about 34 and a half points under, which is close, but not there. That is a loss for you this week on the prediction front.
I'm taking it. Just like I took it last week, I'm taking it. I'm counting that as a win for this week.
I am not letting you get away with that again this week. You lose again this week. All
right, whatever.
Much like last week.
Whatever.
That's a loss for you.
All right, go ahead.
My prediction last week.
Oh yeah, Matt Ryan
was against the bad Washington secondary that Matt Ryan would have 40 fantasy points, his biggest game of the year, and that did not happen. Matt Ryan came out with 20 fantasy points, a fumble and an interception early in the game. Really put him. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. But that put him behind. On the week, as far as those points go, he just wasn't able to get. They didn't throw a lot of touchdowns. He just really had to chug away. And Washington played Atlanta harder than I thought they would. So, kudos to Washington fans.
It was a miracle.
Next head's okay.
It was a miracle. I don't know how we did it. I mean, we didn't win, but the fact that we kept the Falcons to a reasonable scoring pace. We kept them under 30. They only scored 24 against us, so I count that as a huge win for us as a secondary that couldn't do anything. I thought the Skins looked pretty good. Kirk Cousins, we got to see some of him. He had a really nice pass, 77-yard touchdown pass. Once Griff comes back from this concussion, which of course he's gonna, because there's no way they leave him out this week. They just will. They will lie, cheat, and steal, and do whatever they have to get that guy on the field. And we'll see what he can do this week against the Vikings. So, Week 6 predictions.
Did you have something in mind?
Do I have something in mind?
Uh-huh.
Me having something in mind would imply that I prepared for this podcast. Yeah,
I wish that was the case.
What do you think?
Do have something in mind this week, and I am not going to ride this as I'm making a bold prediction. I'm making the bold prediction that this is the first week that Jacquizz Rodgers outscores Michael Turner in fantasy football. I think
I like that.
That the writing is on the wall in Atlanta. Michael Turner is averaging like half a yard a carry or something like that. This is a vast exaggeration, but he's not running for a lot. He's volume running right now, just a ton of rushes, and just getting lucky touchdowns. Jacquizz Rodgers, when he's on the field, is more electric than Michael Turner, catching more passes out of the backfield. I guess the first week, he had 15 and a half points in week 3, so I do want to confirm that was not more than Michael Turner. But I will say that Jacquizz Rodgers will absolutely outscore Michael Turner this week, and we will start to see the downfall of Turner and the increase of Jacquizz Rodgers in Atlanta's backfield.
The rise of Rodgers. I'm a huge fan of anyone named Rodgers. You know that. I like that prediction. Continues the streak of being bold. Here's what I'm thinking. So this Thursday night, we're going to see your Pittsburgh Steelers play the Tennessee Titans. And I talked last week about how I'm really hesitant in Thursday night games. I don't really like them. But this week, you better start every single Steelers player you have on your team. Ben Roethlisberger, Mike Wallace, Heath Miller, Antonio Brown, Rashard Mendenhall, all these guys. Because Pittsburgh is coming off a bye, extra rest. Tennessee is on a short week. Tennessee, it turns out, is not a very good football team. Pittsburgh Steelers, I think, are a good team, and when they have time to rest and prepare, they're at their best, they're at their healthiest. I think you're going to see over 34 NFL points for the Steelers, and I think you're going to see under 15 NFL points for the Tennessee Titans. I'm predicting a 20-point game for Mike Wallace. I'm predicting an 18-point game from Rashard Mendenhall and a 28-point game from Ben Roethlisberger, just to make this complicated and difficult to track. That's what I think. I think I'm all in on the Steelers this week. Thursday Night Football, coming off a week of rest, coming off their bye week against a really bad Tennessee Titans team. I'm all in on the Steelers.
Are you locking that in? All in on the Steelers? Bunch of random numbers for players?
Lock it in.
All right, lock it in. They played the Eagles on Sunday.
Yeah.
So they're not coming off a bye. They're actually on a short week right now when they played a pretty bruising, gutted-out game against the Eagles. So we'll see what happens. I do think Tennessee's bad. I think it's a bold prediction to especially put so much on Ben Roethlisberger, given that sometimes that team does better when he's not doing great in fantasy. But we'll see. We
Hey,
shall see.
let's just gloss over the fact that I totally botched everything about that prediction. You know what? I'm still in on the Steelers. I'm still in. I don't care if they're not coming off a bye week. For whatever reason, I'm an idiot. I've been drinking or something. I don't know. But whatever, dude. I'm still in on the Steelers. I've lost all credibility as a... There it is.
All right, now that we've started to
That's
get into
it.
sound effects means we've run out of stuff to talk about. So I will say on behalf of my buddy AJ McCraw at Ducal AJM, I'm Jimmy Hostetler at Ducal J Dean. This is the fantasy football podcast without a name currently because I'm no longer calling us the Deep Bees.
I agree.
Signing off for the week. Again, we'll be back next week. Check us out. We're on iTunes. We're everywhere you can get podcasts. So keep following, keep subscribing, keep listening, keep providing that feedback. We will listen. You all will listen to us again next week.
Steelers coming off that bye week. Big